Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Members online, can anybody give us just a signal if you can hear us okay here? I'm getting some thumbs up, so we will go ahead. And so our goals today are we're going to review some of the revised language based on our last conversation on February 15th. If you'll recall, we got through most of the sections. Through mission, where we had an initial vote, folks asked for a few word changes. During vision, there were some more extensive edits folks asked for. During structure, we got through most of the key elements. We're going to bring that back today. So the goal today is to take votes on all of those key provisions, and then we'll have some continuing conversation on structure, on staffing, particularly on where it's housed, and then on some duties. The areas we'll be covering today will be mission, vision, structure, membership, where to house, staffing, and resources. The intention is to be able to get to a vote on each of those and then have a discussion on duties based on the draft that we shared back on January 29th. So with that, we're hoping that during each, people can vote in, again, one of three ways. Either I support or can live with this if it has support from a majority of the members, or I can support this with a very minor or specific revision. The intention is not to re-workshop all of these, which we spent the last 2 meetings doing, but if there is one word that we need to tweak a little bit live in real time, or for those folks who simply are going to want to vote that they cannot support it. We will also, as we go through, remind everybody that if we don't have unanimous support on any one item, folks will be welcome to send us information on the reason for their opposition that we can include in the report at the end of this. With that, I'm going to go to mission, and your black and white copies may not call it out as clearly as the screen where we put in red the changes, but I will go ahead and read this. These are the changes that were requested during our February 15th meeting. This is the proposed mission. Through an inclusive and collaborative process that engages diverse groups of stakeholders. Afternoon.
That's weird when a room goes silent, right?
Mr. Weissman, I'm just reading the mission as revised based on our last meeting together. Through an inclusive and collaborative process that engages diverse groups of stakeholders impacted by the criminal or juvenile justice system, the Commission to Improve Justice Systems in Colorado shall research, consider, and provide data-informed, evidence-based criminal and juvenile justice policy recommendations to Colorado's elected officials that seek to reduce, and the following words are new, incarceration, disparities, and disproportionalities, that's the end of the change, crime and recidivism, and support victims while promoting the improved safety, health, and well-being of all Colorado communities. Again, the edits here were the addition of the words after reduce to include incarceration and disparities and disproportionalities based on member input when we were together on February 15th. Before we go to a second roll call vote on this, given the changes, does anybody have any comments or questions they'd like to offer? Chair Kay.
The only thing I would have to say is there's a name put in here, and that doesn't have to be the name, okay? So that was one of the names that we threw out, wasn't that Eric and Carrie kind of inserted, but that doesn't have to be the name. So it's an XXX.
Thank you for that correction. And in other places, you'll see it described as the Colorado Commissions to promote adult and juvenile justice system change. So,
I still have one minor comment.
Yes, sir.
Just for the record, I still think putting Colorado elected officials is just incorrect. I am a Colorado elected official, and no one's submitting anything to me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Rather than the legislators.
Is there specific language here that you'd propose?
Well, I mean, I've said before, Colorado legislators, maybe? Do you know what I mean? Because they are the ones that would be making legislative change. Colorado elected officials embodies a whole bunch of people.
How about Colorado's elected public policymakers?
That could be commissioners.
It could be commissioners. Yeah, but sometimes we do make recommendations, and these are recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, there were...
to local governments about things. And that's why we made it a little broader. Sometimes we made recommendations for local probation departments to collect data, you know, that nothing that we put in statute to implement, but TCJJ did kind of statutory recommendations, whatever. So I also think that that could happen, like community corrections boards. I mean, sometimes we might make recommendations. They don't have to follow them, but they may come into play. That's, you know, that was my concern about limiting it to the General Assembly.
Okay.
Mike.
Yeah, on that point, who cares? I mean, basically, I was going to agree. Now there were two things that came out of CCJJ. There was, the legislature, should codify this via a bill. And then once in a while, and I think it really depended on the work group or the task force, there were sort of policy recommendations. DOC should do this, or county jails should do that. And that was never going to take the form of a bill. Maybe it was an AR, maybe it was just sort of a change in practice, possibly, that would never be reduced to writing anywhere. I think that full scope is appropriate just to preserve space. So I don't, for that reason, and the historical precedent, I don't necessarily see a problem with Colorado's elected officials. We could tweak it. Frankly, it could also be silent, provide data-informed, evidence-based criminal and juvenile justice policy recommendations that seek to reduce and leave the target audience sort of unstated.
That might be a good idea, just to make recommendations.
Any concerns of deleting two Colorado's elected officials and limiting it to make policy recommendations?
Yeah, I think that's a good.
Seeing no concerns, I'm deleting in real time on the screen. So it now reads, shall research consider and provide data-informed, evidence-based criminal and juvenile justice policy recommendations that seek to.
That's good. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Chair.
Other questions, comments, or suggestions? Madam Chair, shall we take it to a vote?
Yes, please.
So the vote is to support the mission as now edited and appearing on screen. Vincent?
Support.
Maureen?
Me?
Yes.
Sorry, yes.
Ubaldo, online.
I support.
Yes. Janet?
I support, thank you.
Mr. Fitzsimons?
Support.
We are missing Senator Gardner and Representative Gonzalez. We do not have Tristan, Director Hilton.
Because I'm in this building, I think I'm supposed to say aye. Right? Right?
I in the Senate.
I in the Senate,
Okay,
whatever. I support it.
Oh, you got both there.
Debbie?
I support.
Do not see Mr. Lester or Mr. Raines. Professor Terranova?
I support.
Emily?
I support.
Representative Weissman?
AYE, support.
We have unanimous support from all members in attendance with a quorum present. With that, we will move forward to the vision. The vision did get some significant edits or additions, including the name, and you'll see at the end, in the third line from the bottom, some additions. Revised version based on the input and with the new name inserted at present. It is the vision of the Colorado Commissions to promote adult and juvenile justice system change, to lead Colorado in the creation of a comprehensive and transformative approach to criminal and juvenile justice, committed to collaboration, persistence, and unwavering dedication to equity and justice. CCAJC and CCJJC center the voices of all persons with lived experiences with the justice system, supported by informed and engaged system professionals. Through inclusive policies, community engagement, and evidence-based practices, CCAJC and CCJJC strive to build justice systems that, the following phrase is new, enhance public safety and well-being in communities. End of addition. The commissions will address systemic barriers and uplift and support every individual on their journey toward healing, rehabilitation, and community reintegration. And I do want to, if I could pause, I see that Director Stansel is online. He just had turned his camera off. Director Stansel, while I've got you, can I go back to confirm your vote on the mission?
I support.
Thank you, and I apologize for missing with the camera off. If anybody is watching online, iPhone is Director Stansel. Coming back to the vision, questions, comments, or proposals for change for discussion. Representative Weissman.
Two small things. Second to last line, I believe that supports should read support, this subject verb agreement. Question about the naming. You know, and I'm not going to get hung up on names. We used one commission name in mission. We have a different construction of the two plural commissions here where they intended to match.
They're gonna need to match.
Yeah.
And like I said, we just threw out.
Okay.
And Representative Weissman, I'm now in the online that's appearing on the screen. I put this name as you're seeing it on vision on the mission.
Okay, sorry, I'm still on paper.
No, that's my error.
Yeah, those are my only two comments.
Yeah.
I've corrected support to the singular. We've got name match. Debbie.
I just have a question on the definition of lived experiences.
And I think we talked about that a lot by saying that's everybody.
Meaning,
That means anybody who has lived through an experience, whether it be a survivor, or a family member, or, you know,
so
all of us.
broadening the definition of,
Lived experience should not be limited to, and I think we know it's not limited to just people who are charged with a crime or their family. It's everybody.
thank you.
It's all.
I'm sorry I missed that.
That was going to be my question too, or, you know, just a comment was that I don't want us, I wouldn't want us to just automatically assume lived experience means formerly incarcerated individuals.
No.
Lived experience should be broad, and
Thank you.
actually, I don't think it's mutually exclusive between lived experience and system professionals, because system professionals can have lived experience too. It's not going to prevent my support vote, but I just wanted to be on record that I think it should be pretty broad.
Would it be helpful in addressing these comments and concerns if in the narrative of the report, we called out and were explicit that the working group's intention is that lived experience is interpreted broadly to mean those with experience professionally and with the relevant systems?
Well, it can be a combination too.
Yeah, and I think that applies to the term members of the community too. I mean, we talk about that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Maureen has articulated that way better than me.
Broadly, yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think it is the crossover and the fact that I think the testimony and all our discussions has been that everybody has some lived experience, you know, and it's just, we shouldn't make it one side or the other, you know, and say, okay, these guys over here and these guys over here.
Yeah, you want to
All inclusive.
get away from assumptions.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea to make sure it's clear in our narrative.
We will do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So sort of similarly in the final line, supporting every individual on their journey, that's the same kind of focus on individuals who've been incarcerated or something, as opposed to supporting every individual and community on a journey toward healing, rehabilitation, and reintegration.
So you don't see individual as inclusive? I don't see the need for and community. To me, I mean, are you looking for kind of that language there also? I'm
It
just
just
asking.
seems very focused on,
You think it's focused?
that final line seems focused on the reintegration of incarcerated individuals.
See, and I
which is great.
read it for victims, from my perspective. Perspective and perception, right? Different things. But yeah, I'm not opposed to trying to make sure that that encompasses something I'm not seeing or you're not seeing.
Is there specific language you'd like to propose for the group to consider?
No, I'm not gonna be fussy about it.
No.
All right, should we vote?
Let me,
I got a question.
Sure, yeah.
You said that we're down to one name. Which name are we down to?
We're down to Colorado commissions to promote adult and juvenile justice system change. And I actually think that we've got two names for the two entities.
Yeah.
But they are collectively the Colorado commissions to promote adult and juvenile justice and system change. with one being the commission to promote.
To promote or improve? Oh, promote. I see what you're saying.
Promote change.
The overarching name, you said that's in the vision is which? In the
We
mission.
replace that with the one that's in the vision.
Yeah, we have two commissions that overlap, so we're gonna constantly refer to them as commissions to promote adult and juvenile change. One's gonna be the,
Adult, one juvenile.
Yeah.
one adult, one juvenile, and we have that intersection for the coordinating
So
council.
the one that's in the mission gets scratched.
Correct, and replace with what's in the
There we
vision.
go.
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Okay, well, we'll go to a vote again, and I guess we can say aye or yes, depending on which chamber you like to associate with. On supporting the vision, Vincent,
Yes.
Chair Kane,
Aye.
Ubaldo,
Fighting for some
I
house committee
support.
one.
thank you. Janet,
Support.
Sheriff Fitzsimon,
Support.
Director Hilke,
Support.
Ms. Hunter Holden,
Support.
Chair Raines,
Support.
Director Stansel.
Support.
Thank you. Victoria,
Support.
Emily,
Support.
Representative Weissman. A thumbs up, he's just not even giving me the aye or the yes, he's a thumbs up, but I'll read it out for those not in the room. We have unanimous support for the vision as amended. Next, we will go to structure. And to ground us in our last conversation, the support from the group was to support a structure with two bodies, one coordinating council of members of members from each of those two commissions. We will go into membership following this. The one thing that folks asked at our February 15th meeting to clarify, where we had some discussion, was what happens if one of these task forces of one of the commissions puts forward a recommendation? Does that vote carry? And the consensus of the group on February 15th was that the subcommittee or task force recommendations would advance as recommendations of the respective commission unless overturned by a 2/3 vote of the membership of the respective commission. Questions, comments, or discussion points on the structure? Understanding we will next go to the membership.
Yeah, and I just want to add that this coordinating council, I see as the group of people from both commissions that receives from community, agencies, whatever, ideas for the task force. So, it says here, define in statute the input process. In our recommendation, we're probably going to have to do something. But when we do our final vote on that, we'll have some more language on how the coordinating council obtains information. The statute right now only says the governor does a letter, and we don't want it just to be the governor. We want it to be everybody has an opportunity, and notice is sent to everybody for input. Right, Tom?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like what Tom does. All of his DAs send all their ideas in, and then he says yes, no, right?
Oh, yeah.
To what,
Exactly how it works.
what they would.
You consult the Ouija board first.
Yes, I think that.
Yeah.
So anyway, will be the process.
Other questions or points of clarification on the structure or any adjustments since our last meeting? Okay, hearing none, we will go again. Yes.
So point of clarification, if the task force votes unanimously, they move something forward, the council then could override it by 2/3 vote, but let's say it moves forward. If there's a entity on the council, such as DOC, who doesn't have a vote, but that moves forward, does DOC retain the right to oppose if that moves forward as legislation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for the
And
question.
we may need to put that in the discussion.
We'll include that in the report to clarify.
That was the intent.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I could see legislators wondering the same thing. It's very much worth discussing going forward.
We will clarify that in the report, and I think that one of the appendices to this report will probably have to be points like this that will need to be addressed in the operations, whether they're bylaws or formal policies of these commissions when they're stood up. Okay, we will go to the roll call vote. Vincent?
Support.
Ms. King?
Support.
Mr. Chavez?
Support.
Janet Drake?
Support.
Sheriff Fitzsimons?
Support.
Kristen?
I'm going to abstain on this one since I just came in.
Fine. Director Hilke?
Support.
Debbie?
Oh, I support, sorry.
Mr. Raines?
Support.
Mr. Stansel?
I support.
Victoria?
I support.
Emily?
Support.
Representative Weitzman?
Support.
We have unanimous support with one abstention for the structure as defined with members present. Next, we will go to membership, where there have been some revisions since our last meeting, so we will walk through these. We're describing each of these separately. I'll first talk through the membership of the adult entity. For the adult entity, 2 prosecutors, including 1 urban and rural, 1 public defender, 1 private criminal, Ms. King.
I think we changed that, I changed that on my notes to you, that Tom and I discussed this, and Tristan, tell me, we thought it'd be easiest just to say an ADC appointment instead of private defense bar, so that the agency would pick the person. So I think it would just say a private defense bar appointed by ADC, or ADC appointment.
Understood. Tristan, is that?
That's fine. And I will just say, for point of clarification, there are many members of my organization, the Colorado Criminal Defense Bar, who do both private defense work and ADC appointed counsel work. So I would just want it to be clear that you don't have to do 100% one or the other. It's okay for your practice to be mixed to qualify for that appointment.
So if you see on screen, that has been adjusted to 1 private defense bar or other ADC appointee. Is that correct?
No. 1 private defense bar appointed by ADC.
Okay.
And that way we don't have to decide whether it's a legislative or an executive appointment. It's appointed by that agency.
Okay. Now, as I go forward, one of the additions to today's conversation or today's listing is who would make the appointment. At our February 15th conversation, members were trying to find some balance between legislative and executive or boards and commissions appointments. Right. So you see that indicated for each individual going forward. So we've got 1 representative of law enforcement appointed by boards and commissions, 1 from local government boards and commissions, 1 academic or research professional.
I think it's important for those in law enforcement to recognize that local government could be another law enforcement person, potentially, if that's what local government chooses. So, because we went back and forth on the chief and sheriff as opposed to 1, and we saw that as the potential remedy.
And we'll have discussion separately of adult and then juvenile. I'm just going to go through the membership of adult, and we'll discuss that. So 1 local government, 1 academic research professional by boards and commissions, 1 mental health professional.
I think we had discussed changing that to be mental health professional or advocate.
Yeah.
Advocate.
Yeah, or
Yeah, that was, also, I think I put that on there and I missed it, the change.
Okay. If you view on screen, which will be our official record, that is now 1 mental health professional or advocate appointed by the speaker or the legislature. 1 substance use disorder professional, again appointed by the speaker or legislature. 1 victim or survivor appointed by boards and commissions. 1 advocate for victims and survivors appointed by the speaker or legislature. 1 formerly incarcerated individual appointed by the speaker or legislature. 1 advocate for the formerly incarcerated appointed by the speaker or legislature.
I think one of those was supposed to be boards and commissions, Maureen. That's what we talked about last night.
Yeah, we were kind of splitting, so.
So above we have the individual appointed by boards and commissions, and then the advocate appointed by the speaker or leg.
Yeah, it was just a thought to give boards and commissions one of them and speaker legislature one of them. I had never really cared which one was which, but it's why we did what we did up on victim survivor.
Yeah.
you mind sharing the reasoning between splitting it up that way?
So that both entities feel equally empowered, which is a big part of why we're here.
Representative Weissman.
So a few things on this so far. To back up to Tom's point, so local government, however many lines down that is meant to be very broadly construed. So municipal or county, I mean, theoretically appointed or even elected. So so we don't just mean, say, a commissioner or a counselor. We might mean an elected sheriff. We might mean an appointed chief of police.
All of the above.
Understood. When we get to drafting, we just need to be super clear on that. Next point, mental health professional or advocate, per Vincent, did, and I guess maybe Vincent could speak first to his intent here. Do we want to do the same disjunctive for substance use disorder professional? Should that be or advocate as well? Or I mean,
I think so. It occurred to me to mention that.
Okay.
I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you really want somebody who knows the issue. I think that's where we started, okay, with the substance use disorder professional, somebody who's worked in the field, because sometimes the advocates don't have the knowledge the professional has.
Whereas they're going to be, you know, incredibly valuable at the task force level.
Right. So, but, you know, one way or the other, I don't really care.
I'm not trying to sort of drive a strong feeling one way or the other, just that did the group want there to be parallelism between mental health professional or an SUD professional and then last point, when we say speaker / legislature, we should balance between the House and the Senate doing the appointments.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason it was drafted this way was because I didn't know how it happened. And I think, Mike, you know better. If there's a joint appointment, or is there a way the speaker and the president can do it together, or do you have to say speaker, president?
What I think is the overwhelming majority rule is, you know, and we do a zillion bills a year that set up some task force, work group, something. Speaker gets some, president gets some, they're separate. And there's always this attempt to kind of balance it out. And then each caucus, you know, there's kind of a staff support function. It's not as formalized as boards and commissions. There's not, you know, an office within the Senate majority or the House majority, but been around long enough to have seen how these things go, and there's time and thought put into collecting the right names and screening them and forwarding them to the decider, in this case, the speaker or the president, by analogy to the role of the office, pipelining things to the governor. So we just shouldn't lodge it all in one chamber or the other, and I don't think that we should try to make them joint, because I think that it's cumbersome and unusual. Okay,
so we'd have to split between speaker and president?
Yeah.
And should we split it? I mean, there's a couple ways to do it. Have, on the adult side, alternate, and on the juvenile side, alternate, or have one house to the adult and one house to the juvenile?
Alternate.
Yeah, mix it up,
Alternate.
yeah. Mix up both.
So,
And so we didn't expand it that much from the last meeting. Tom and I met and
Vincent has a question.
Sorry, just one more point, just for consistent grammatical usage, that incarcerated is an adjective and might want to put incarcerated person or individual or something like that.
I'm with you.
Right.
And that in the last one as well.
And we're gonna do, substance abuse professional or advocate. I'm not sure. Or substance abuse.
and
Advocacy group.
for clarification then, Maureen, are we alternating that the mental health professional advocate would be speaker, the next substance use disorder professional advocate would be Senate president? We're just alternating in order that they're listed here? And then we could go to the opposite alternating pattern on juvenile?
Is that where you're going, Mike?
Seems okay to me.
Yeah, that works.
Sure.
I think that the one challenge we have there is we have an odd number We have a total of 5 positions appointed by the legislature. If you look online, I now have the mental health professional or advocate from the speaker, the substance use disorder professional or advocate, the president, the advocate for victim survivors, the speaker, one formerly incarcerated person, the Senate president. That leaves one advocate for the former or currently incarcerated person. One or the other.
Well, one of those is supposed to be boards and commissions.
Very well then. Do we have further comment or questions, points of clarification?
No, I think that works out, actually, the numbers.
Yeah.
We have 13, and then we did not get to the ex officio members. Based on our February 15th conversation, we expanded from 2 legislators to 4 legislators. We have 1 member represented judicial, 1 from corrections, and 1 from public safety.
We changed that. We put public safety in and still ex officio. We did present this to the governor's office, Tom and I. But as chair now, you're a non-voting member unless you break a tie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we changed it from somebody from the governor's policy office to Department of Public Safety, ex officio.
And we felt like it,
From the last.
because you can still be on all the task forces.
Yeah.
And the task forces really drive the ship here.
If a DPS member gets appointed to a task force, they get a vote.
Right.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's a good point of clarification to add for bylaws as well.
Oh, that ex officio members that serve on task force are voting members.
Voting members,
Yeah.
Anybody on a task force, presumably a voting member.
We don't have exos on, we haven't really talked about exos on task forces.
Right.
And I see Mr. Chavez has a question. Ubaldo, is your question about this discussion right now on the ex officio members?
No, my question was about the voting member, the advocate for the formerly or currently incarcerated person. Maybe this question is for Maureen and Tom. Who do you believe is an advocate for the formerly or currently incarcerated person? Like, what does that look like? Can you give me an example of an advocate?
I think anybody in your organization would be an advocate. I think anybody at TCJJ would be an advocate. I think anybody that's working, you know, at Second Chance Center is an advocate. I think anybody that's working at Servicios is an advocate. I think, you know, potentially ACLU and their group could apply as an advocate for formerly incarcerated. So,
I mean, shoot, you could have.
What about family member? What about?
Well, yeah, you could have that. You could have people within the COVA. You could have someone there who's a victim. I mean, it's got to be broad.
Would it be helpful if in the narrative of this report we included language that says this is to be interpreted broadly and includes without limitation some of the individuals that you're all naming right now?
I would like that, please.
yeah, and we maybe should say a community-based advocate.
Yes, please.
Can we say community-based advocate for a formerly incarcerated person? So that it's
Have any concerns about adding community-based advocate?
It excludes what you just said.
Family member?
Yeah.
Family member.
Which I don't know why you would want to exclude it.
Not necessarily.
Unless they're.
No, I don't think, I just don't want
Community-based advocate
to,
is a family member?
I mean, this is just me, all right, we all bring our stuff here. We talk about sort of community versus system, like the narrower example being the system victim assistant versus the community victim advocate, you know? What we're talking about is different and bigger than that, but that's what I'm hearing in the air.
Is it more helpful to add community-based to the title here, or to include that in the language of the report that says this is to be interpreted broadly and may mean community-based, family member, or in some of the individuals and organizations you listed?
I mean, for what it's worth, I always think it's useful when you're putting together policy of any type or statutory language to really have some definitions and language in your reporting. And I think rather than trying to define everything in your lists and statements, really just add a definition and define what you're talking about there. And that, I mean, that's what I would do rather than trying to be so specific here.
So in the bill definition.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean, that would be my suggestion, because if you try to be so specific here, you're gonna miss something.
Right, yeah, I agree, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be a DOC employee who says, I'm gonna advocate for the people I supervise.
I mean, we do, and we could.
You could, I guess, that wasn't what I was envisioning.
Are members comfortable that we're trusting the senator and the representative that when bill is drafted and definitions created, that we address there?
Yeah, I think that's.
Okay.
So with everybody's permission, I'm going to move to the juvenile entity, and we'll vote on the membership structures as a whole. For juvenile, again, we've got 13 members plus 7 non-voting ex officio, 2 prosecutors, 1 public defender. I will adjust to 1 private defense bar. It's an ADC appointee. 1 guardian ad litem appointed by ADC. 1 child welfare from a local agency nominated by boards and commissions. 1 child advocacy group. Then we'll have to put this as the speaker. 1 law enforcement appointed by boards and commissions. 1 victim or survivor appointed by boards and commissions. 1 advocate for victims and survivors appointed by the Senate President. 1 system-involved individual from the current or past 24 months appointed by the Speaker. 1 parent of a system-involved individual appointed by the Senate President.
That's gonna be boards and commissions again, right? We're trying to get that parity.
I think we've got parity right now. We have the Speaker appointing a child advocacy group, and...
No. I mean, you have, in regard to system involved, 1 is from the legislature, 1 is from boards and commissions.
Okay. So then to have the Speaker and the President with parity then, do we want to move to 1 research-based professional, brain development or child psych, that's currently boards and commissions to the Senate President?
Sure.
Or do we have another suggestion of, right now we have, for legislative appointees, 1 child advocacy group appointed by the Speaker, 1 advocate for victims or survivors appointed by the Senate President, 1 system-involved individual appointed by the Speaker. That's 2 appointed by the Speaker and 1 appointed by the Senate President.
Okay, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Are there any concerns about that inequity between?
Yeah, there should be 4 and 4, because there's 8.
Yeah.
It needs to balance.
Is there a suggestion for another that is currently listed as boards and commissions to instead be appointed by the Senate President? Should the parent, looking across, we have a lot of the individual advocates or lived experience with the system appointed by the House and by the Senate. Would this be a place to move the 1 parent of a system-involved individual to be appointed by the Senate President, or do you want to keep that at boards and commissions?
Yeah, because we're trying to balance those 2 appointments. I mean,
The researcher?
I don't have a problem with the researcher.
The researcher goes to the Senate.
Researcher to the Senate President?
Is that okay with folks?
Yeah. Sure. And then I made a mistake there. The guardian ad litem is appointed by OCR, not ADC.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Corrected on mine. The guardian ad litem appointed by OCR.
That's the Office of the Child Representative.
You've got an S you don't need on 1 victim survivor there.
Thank you.
And 1 child welfare professional, or what are you going to put there?
Tom and Maureen, the intention be under juvenile, 1 child welfare, and it's parent local. Is that representative of a child welfare agency?
I think that's what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
Local agency.
A local agency.
That's a revised real-time online to be one child welfare agency representative, paren local, appointed by boards and commissions.
I don't know that, practice area very well. Is there a reason you want it local and not a statewide or other? Like, I'm not sure we need the qualifier that's on suggested.
We're putting child protection in ex officio,
Yeah.
so DHM, and I just think the local child welfare agencies have a lot of independence,
Yeah.
and they really operate quite a bit differently, you know, and their funding is a little different, so I think having some local there is valuable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And our ex officio non-voting members include, again, 2 legislators revised to 4 legislators, 1 person from the DYS, 1 from the CPO Ombudsman, 1 from DHS Child Protection or Placement. A question for the chairs, just for clarification for the group. We have 4 legislators. Are we intending 4 broadly, or 4 members of the House, or 2 members of the House and 2 members of the Senate?
That's split.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that in our notes from the last meeting.
2 from each party, regardless of chamber.
No, you, Dems, 1 from the House, 1 from the Senate, 2 Republicans, 1 from the House, 1 from the Senate.
Got it.
Leadership chooses.
The notes from our last meeting had,
No, sometimes the
had,
chooses.
ranking
Into the stick.
that the chair of the judiciary committees and the ranking member of the judiciary committees.
Yeah. This was a
Yeah.
little bit of an open point, last time. Do we, when we get to the level of a bill, do you codify chair and ranking? No, I don't think so. There's one instance, like the chairs of the judiciary committees are written into the Committee on Legal Services, but that's the exception. I mean, I think just out of sort of respect, and Senator, tell me what you think from your side. My thought for how to write this up is very clearly we say 1D, 1R, House, Senate. That's it. But appointments by chamber leadership, essentially. A House Republican appointed by the House Republican leader, a Senate Republican appointed by the Senate Republican leader, president, and that may in fact be the chair and ranking of the committees, but it may not be. We would just want to have flexibility.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, except, you know, we could never get the House Republicans to appoint people to CCJJ, despite best effort. So that's why I was thinking, if it was with the judiciary chairs, you would, you know, then we have problems getting people appointed.
The person you just said, or
designate.
Or designate, so you define, maybe you define yourselves, or just, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know how to get around
It may not
Maureen's
be a
problem.
problem.
Yeah, failure to participate is hard to.
Yeah.
I was going to say 2 things. One, you know,
Like not voting.
this whole thing is about starting fresh. 2, non-involvement is less of a problem when people are exo.
Right, that's true.
It's not great, but it's not like thwarting a quorum or something.
While we're talking about XO, I guess I just wondered if I should be trying to advocate for somebody from CDPS being on there, particularly like from Division of Criminal Justice, that has so much work in the world of supporting juvenile matters. I don't know.
The deflection, diversion folks.
Yeah.
Be a good pick for that.
But I don't know if there was logic in leaving them out, but.
Well, because we had DYS and we had DHS, which it's kind of a division of, you know, but we wanted child welfare in there too, on the state level and the local level. I just figured, I think on the task force level, DCJ people could get involved. Because I don't know if DCJ wants to get involved in age of delinquency.
They do.
I think we're always interested in that conversation.
Yeah, you always are.
A question without an opinion, but given OAJJA and the JJDP sitting over at DCJ.
Right. We are voting on the home, you know, if DCJ is the home.
And I guess just the idea of bridging the gap between adult and juvenile that DCJ does so much as well was part of our logic. It's probably not a hill to die on for sure, but,
I mean, I don't have heartburn over adding another ex officio.
it's an ex officio. Yeah.
I think where we were coming from was, it was that kind of back and forth on executive, legislature, executive.
Mm-hmm.
There's no magic to it. I don't know.
Yeah, because we had two executives, so we had the CPO, who's kind of independent, that I think Ubaldo brought up at the last meeting, and then the legislative, so.
Well, it would be a non-voting member anyway, so, I mean,
It's more.
it's symbolic.
To me, to me, it's kind of like the same discussion we've had about the AG. It's like, are they interested? Yes, they're interested.
Yeah.
Are they gonna lose sleep if they're not named in here as an ex officio? I don't think so. Because to the extent that a task force needs their input, they're gonna be on it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, no magic to the reasoning, Stan.
Sure. I guess my thoughts would be add somebody as an ex officio member from CDPS. But again, that's probably not a hill to die on, considering that task force members can vote as well. So I don't know how the group feels about it.
I'm fine with it.
Speak now, or?
Director, are you making a proposal to add a representative?
Yes, please.
Okay, we've got that proposal on the table. Are there concerns or objections? We've got a second.
I do have a concern about that, because I think it tips the balance on executive representation, executive branch representation, and it makes the makeup of ex officio members look an awful lot like the adult entity. So why are we trying to put more folks who would be on the adult entity on the juvenile entity?
Tristan, if there were 3 from the exec branch and from on the ex officio and 4 from the legislative branch on ex officio, how does that tip it in the favor of the exec branch?
I mean, more than what we've got as far as the list currently.
Okay, I just didn't understand the math.
You're talking just primarily optics, right? I mean, and I get that.
Tristan, would it be relevant to your concern if that person was somebody that worked in juvenile justice at CDPS?
I mean, I guess I'm ignorant of the organizational chart at CDPS. Who are the juvenile experts there?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
No, most of them live within the Office of Adult and Juvenile Justice. We have the boards of commissions that Eric mentioned earlier, and we do a lot of work with communities, with DAs, with defense counsel around deflection, diversion, getting grant dollars out the door to help support community organizations working with youth to support them and their families. So we'd be happy to have you over at 6th and Kipling sometime, and we can introduce you to the folks.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
So is the idea to put someone from CDPS who specializes in juvenile diversion on as an ex officio?
From that office, what's the
And then that's when, to me, it's like, okay, well, if there's a task force on diversion, that's where that person is most valuable. I don't know, I'm just objectively trying to look at this and say, oh, damn, we're within one person of having this done.
Well, and based on that, I guess, I'm willing to withdraw that request. I just felt like it's sort of my responsibility. We have an office in DCJ that does this work.
Because this is certainly the trickiest piece of the puzzle here in many ways, to get consensus.
Yeah, I mean, there's a nice parallelism now, 13 and 7 XOs each. And DCJ and DPS are going to be all in all this when we get to other things.
I'd like to withdraw my motion, please.
Withdraw. With that, we will go to a vote with the membership for both the adult and juvenile.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Not to rock the boat.
I don't mean rock.
I never rock the boat.
Poke the unicorn, man.
You pick it up where I left off.
Yeah, might as well. No, I'm just curious. It has here one research-based professional, brain development child psychologist, but nobody for mental health. It's not really the same thing. There's nobody advocating for mental health for the kids. I mean, Vincent, am I wrong? It's not the same thing.
That is true.
And we are dealing a lot more with competency and substance abuse issues in the adult side than, you know, not that it's not there on the juvenile side, but thinking that was more a task force issue, that it was more important to talk about brain development than put a mental health expert on there, as we looked at people and tried to keep it at 13.
I can tell you, just to share with the group, since COVID, we're getting killed with juvenile mental health. Killed. Like, we can't, let's plug in the dike with parents and kids dealing with mental health issues. Vincent? Yeah. It's just bringing it to the group, that's all. It's like
what would you potentially supplant here?
Well, I don't know that can child welfare and child advocacy live in the same person?
I mean, that's where I would look to.
That's the duplication to me. I mean, I think they could be one and the same. You could find someone who's interested in child welfare is certainly a child advocate, and vice versa.
Well, we could also kick off the GAL.
Because they could come back in on the task force. I almost like that choice better. And put mental health in.
And put mental health in instead of the GAL. I mean, they're not on all delinquency cases.
Right, exactly.
They're only on delinquency cases when the parent can't act as a parent. So.
I mean, it's not excluding them from the conversation.
There may be a role in a task force.
Yeah, I think so. I would move that.
So replacing the guardian ad litem with a mental health professional or advocate?
Yeah, I would make that motion.
And is that to be appointed by boards and commissions?
What was in here? See, it was OC. That's probably.
We had that appointed, well, it's appointed by the speaker and the adult, but we currently have parity there.
We did mental health, yeah, right.
I know
where you're going. Do it.
Go.
No, I know where you're going. Go ahead and do it.
Well, we had switched the research-based professional to be the president. We could put that back to boards and commissions.
And make mental health.
Appointed by the Senate president.
Yeah. That would be my motion.
I think you're gonna get some pushback from Office of the Child Representative that they're not a part of this.
Well, they are part of it. I mean, that's the thing. I think anyone who says, I'm not a part of this, isn't understanding the whole picture.
I'm just suggesting that we might consider moving them into the ex officio camp where they could sit neatly and still be a system advisor. They're fairly neutral to Tristan's earlier point about balancing, you know, kind of the sides of the aisle. And there's acknowledgement that I mean, that's what they do, is advocate for kids.
In some cases, not all juvenile issues.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. It just, to me, it would feel like an oversight that they're not there.
Janet, your proposal is we add guardian ad litem to the ex officio non-voting members?
There goes your symmetry, Mike.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Let's add Stan then.
I think CPO is more important. Cross off. That's why we put them in. And Stephanie. I don't know that guardian ad litem, OCR is involved in a lot of your stuff, are they?
Ooh. I'd have to check.
They don't seem, they've never engaged really. They kind of operate. But and policy.
Again, not the arena that I operate in, but they seem to me like a pretty big state level player that focuses their work on juveniles. So,
but they are mostly DNN, not the
yeah, not the criminal side of the house,
right?
Civil side,
the juvenile side.
Mostly it's.
And I think we got a lot of the DNN stuff covered.
Well, the local child welfare people will be
You
your
got the
DNN people.
Child advocacy group and.
Is it helpful to add language to the narrative of the report emphasizing the importance of including guardian ad litem, including OAJJA at DCJ in appropriate task forces?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important that that organization know that they weren't just overlooked. And so that should be reflected in the report.
That makes sense.
And it sounds like there's good logic maybe to not include them here, so I'm down with that.
We'll make reference to both non-included DCJ's OAJJA team and the guardian ad litem as important voices for task forces or subcommittees and discussions related to their expertise.
And same kind of reference to the Attorney General in both groups.
Understood. Got it.
Thanks, Tom.
Always looking after you. We go way back.
Indeed.
With that, any other comments before we go to a roll call?
Just for clarification, we're taking off GAL and adding mental health.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay.
And how did we state it right?
One mental health professional or advocate appointed by the Senate President.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with those changes, we'll mix it up a little bit. Representative Weissman.
And I'm sorry, we are proposing a GAL appointed by ADC as an EXO, or we have dropped that?
We are not including that. We will reference them in the report as an important voice.
Good, all right. So we are keeping to the 13 plus for EXO formulation with the amendments we've discussed.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have a great line.
No, I understood.
Yes.
Emily.
Support.
Victoria.
Support.
Mr. Stansel.
Still have a little heartburn with the non-voting.
I'm sorry, Mr. Stansel?
Support.
Support, thank you. Chair Raines.
So let it be written, so let it be done.
Debbie. Debbie?
Yeah.
Director Hilke.
Support.
Tristan. Support. Senator Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sheriff.
Support.
Janet.
Support.
Ubaldo.
Support.
Chair Kane.
Support.
Vincent. Support. We have unanimous support from all members in attendance in person and online for the membership as revised.
That's really good work, people.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's been a tough nut to crack.
Now let's get to the next one. I'm sure it will be just as smooth. Now we're going to go into the base and staffing. Where does this exist and how is it staffed? We had some pretty robust discussion at our last meeting. The different, as you'll recall, we talked about it being based in the legislature and supported primarily by Ledge Council. We talked about it being supported in a executive branch agency. In all cases, everybody really wanted to emphasize the importance of the autonomy and independence. We had some conversation about the different expertise of staff to provide different types of research, whether that was data and analytical or research. We end up with two options to discuss and then vote on today. In either one, the vision would be that it's an independent commission functioning as a type 2 entity. Option one would have these commissions supported and staffed by DCJ, research and data provided by DCJ in conjunction with other agencies as needed. We had some specific conversations about some of the support that maybe DHS or BHA could provide. Additional resources for legal analysis and study by Ledge Council staff at the request of legislative ex officio members. No bill titles assigned to it. And then the following language is proposed following some conversations Chair Kane had, and this is pulled, as I understand it, from a previous bill, that these commissions shall not be subject to administrative direction by any department, board, or other agency of the state, but shall work as an independent entity to fulfill, without political interference, its statutory mission.
Amen.
Option two would have the entity staffed by Ledge Council staff. Legislative members or their designees would serve as the oversight for the commissions and its entities. Legislative committee votes on recommendations and up to 5 bill titles. Let's first open it up to questions of clarification. Director Hilke.
Statement more than anything else, we do have a recommendation as far as staffing goes, should this be the option that the group agrees on, that comes from based on our experience. But the question that I have is about the term administrative direction. I think what we're trying to avoid is, one branch or the other's influence on recommendations and that kind of thing. But administrative direction also captures where we're gonna have the meeting.
Scheduling meetings.
Are we gonna cancel because there's too much going on with other things, in the middle of session, or these kinds of things? And, I guess I don't wanna get too far into the weeds, but, administrative direction is a really broad term.
Mike, did you mean policy direction or?
Yeah, I mean, so this was admittedly a rough cut, late last night, and then, let me back up. So we've discussed this concept, I think at length, and then now the question was how textually to proceed. Maureen asked me to dig off some stuff, and I'm thinking of standard language that is used when we by bill create either a special purpose authority or an enterprise. These are things that have certain status under Tabor. Doesn't matter here, but my thought is just that could be starting point. So that was, maybe was that from this session's equal justice thing that we have in committee next week. The language is doing a different thing in that other context. It's kind of speaking into the domain of Tabor law, but it's rattled around my head for years. And again, we don't care about Tabor law here, but the point was, what is some kind of somewhat familiar, previously used language to speak to independence from otherwise prevailing forces? It was an attempt to start a conversation. I think it's sort of administrative versus some other adjective, I think is a reasonable discussion.
Could it be shall not be subject to the authority or policy direction of any department?
Direction.
Yeah. I think we all understand the spirit of it,
Yeah,
we just need to capture it that way,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we mean like, calendaring or booking a room or setting up a Zoom or something.
What if we moved that clarifier up earlier in the sentence and said that the subject matter or topics of inquiry of CCAJC shall not be subject to direction by?
I think that's more clear, for sure.
Say it again.
If we said the subject matter or topics of inquiry, I'm putting this on screen just for consideration.
Well, because we want to make sure the vote is also, not, subject matter, matters of inquiry, but also the outcome of the vote shouldn't be subject to the direction.
So if we said the subject matter, comma, topics of inquiry and votes of the commission shall not be subject to direction by any department, board, or other agency of the state, but commissions shall work as an independent entity to fulfill, without political interference, its statutory mission.
I don't know about that voting part, because the representatives of, like, the public defender's office,
Will be
they've got to
voting?
vote in line with what the city's office
Yeah, I
wants,
like it.
so.
I like it shall not be subject to
So I have another.
policy or, instead, another word besides administrative.
I have another formulation, rather than trying to say what's, let me just not try to describe it and say it. CCAJC should not be subject to direction by any department, board, or other agency of the state, but shall work as an independent entity to fulfill without political interference its statutory mission, semicolon, except that TCJ and list other offices here may provide administrative, maybe ministerial, maybe logistical support to CCAJC, and so that it may fulfill its mission. The except that construct.
I'm good with that. I mean, I think that gets the spirit of it. I mean, it is a little bit of a, it's just it's awkward because what we're talking about is we state type 2 entity and then
I want to be clear that we want to do it like CCJJ, where it's not defined as a type 2.
Right.
It's treated like one.
Yeah. But we're also saying we want to treat it as a type 1. when we say independent,
Yeah.
you know? So, I mean, I don't know that we can get around that because it's just harder
Let's
lift,
put it in statute. and see.
I do think.
You know, how many times have I heard people say, yeah, I'm not worried it's unconstitutional, the courts will sort that out.
Yeah. No, but I think Mike's suggestion of they accept that is probably, okay.
It's not, you wouldn't like what you first said, subject to substantive policy direction?
Well, and then the conversation went into, you know, what, rather than listing things that shall not be subject to interference, to sum it up, just say, to Stan's threshold point about, yeah, administrative support's okay, say that explicitly at the end. Say what is okay rather than trying to sort of daisy chain a list of things that aren't, and then we get into issues there. I think like CCJJ was silent about type 1, type 2. That invokes a whole body of law from the Administrative Organization Act that I don't think is helpful or necessary here. So I think we should not say this is either type 1 or type 2. Really, it's truly neither. We could all analogize in our own ways, but I think that's almost not relevant.
Representative Weissman, if I could check some language with you, and then we can have a separate discussion whether we want to delete the sentence about independent commission functioning as. I now have this to read, the CCJJC shall not be subject to direction by any department, board, or other agency of the state, but shall work as an independent entity to fulfill without political interference its statutory mission, except that DCJ and other offices may provide logistical, administrative, and other supports.
Yeah, because obviously we need them to do the research.
That's right.
support,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I think that captures the spirit of it for me.
Or maybe, do we change other to research?
Yeah.
And then logistical, administrative, and research probably covers everything we need, just so other doesn't get misconstrued. And I think we mean LCS and,
He's getting the coffee.
or
That's administrative.
DCJ and, you know, legislative, service agency offices or something.
It says other offices.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be a bit
I
more.
think you're there.
Those ones would
If I put DCJ, LCS, and other offices,
we can clean up.
The drafter's still.
We can clean up that draft.
Yeah. Then we'll let you do that voodoo that you do so well.
Well, that's.
So by a non-binding show of hands, is there an interest to have a vote on both option 1 and option 2? By show of hands, who would like to have roll call votes on both options? I'm seeing none. Going to do a roll call vote for option 1 as listed. Vincent.
Word, I guess.
Chair Kane.
Support.
Ubaldo.
I do not support.
Do not support. Janet.
Support.
Support. Sheriff.
Support.
Senator Gonzalez.
Aye.
Senator Gonzalez, aye. Tristan.
Do not support.
Do not support. Director Hilke.
I support with a comment that we have the conversation about the proper level of staffing, but
I get that.
I support.
Yeah, that's the,
Okay, I support them.
Debbie.
I support this.
Chair Raines.
Support.
Director Stansel.
He has dropped off. I will vote in his stead of support.
Adrian votes yes. Victoria.
Support.
Support. Emily.
Support.
Support. Representative Weitzman.
I can live with it.
I have 12 in support, 2 opposed. I will invite both who voted opposed to submit any language they would like to me by email, and we can include your commentary in the report. We will now move forward to talk about staffing and resources. And it sounds like Director Hilke has some thoughts there. Director Hilke, forgive me, I just included what we have heard, which was an estimate of 2.5 to 4, but that we would ask whoever was staffing it for that guide. We also had conversation at the last meeting on February 15th, and we clarified that a little bit. Per diem to match jury service for non-governmental members, mileage for non-governmental members, meeting venues and technology, and a facilitator. Director Hickley, do you want to speak first to staffing?
I will kick it off and then maybe let Matt unpack it a little bit more. I know that he had worked with his staff based on our experience before from CCJJ, and our recommendation is 3 DCJ FTE and at least 1 FTE from LCS with a sufficient amount of money for the consultant. And I don't want us to be too conservative on that amount of money for a consultant. I think that makes or breaks us. Facilitator or? A facilitator, yeah, that's what I meant to say. You're right, Tom. Thanks for catching that. And then
That would be a contract, right? Probably?
yeah, it would be, and it'd probably have to go through, the state procurement process and all of that. As far as the resources on per diem and mileage and all of that, I don't know that we have an opinion on that.
Yeah, I wanted to add something here. It's longer term and uncertain. A couple days ago, I got an email from the Deputy Director of the CSG Justice Center to the effect of, hey, we have some grant funding that maybe is of interest to you. Very broadly written email, 1 paragraph. It came in when I was in the middle of God knows what. Anyway, I talked to this lady on the way in this morning. It's federal grant funding. It's not quite burn jag, but it sounds like you know about it. It is described, and I'm waiting for more to hit my inbox, but it's described as kind of easier to get than a lot of this sort of federal money usually is. CSG Justice Center is sort of in some kind of partner role, and at some length I described the history of CCJJ and this process that we are all now engaged in. And the Deputy Director's sort of verdict was helping present to or even staff at the work group level might actually be a very good fit. I don't think this in any way obviates the conversation we need to have about proper resources on an ongoing basis, just to say that this might be something extra that we could draw down if we go through a better process for it.
Go ahead. So CSG is a well-known organization. We've worked with them in the past in multiple projects. We have a long history of pulling in resources like that to various projects, and so to the degree that this group would find value in bringing in that outside consulting and additional assistance, specifically project-based, is sometimes best, so you can identify a particular item you're working on that they can help provide resources for. I think that's a great option. I'd be cautious, if you want my opinion, about putting too much of a long-term plan associated with an external entity like that, and federal funding.
I agree.
There's a bit of dysfunction.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with them. Can you just say what the acronym stands for?
Council of State Governments.
Council of State Governments, yeah. I just worry too much when we attach important projects to federal grant funding.
Yeah.
That can come and go, and sometimes it's not always the smoothest process. So, and even JAG, as an example, has gone down consistently year after year for a long time. So that's what I would say. But to the degree we can pull them in and other in the nonprofit kind of NGO space to assist projects, I think is a good idea.
Yeah, especially if we have task forces that are defined.
Yeah.
The task forces are not supposed to be on, forever.
Yeah.
So if we get short-term funding.
Yeah.
Well, and to, just footnote that a little bit, I think, the department would be willing to be the grant applicant for that kind of work, for technical assistance project-based. I personally feel, having been through what we've been through before with CCJJ and now with this group, that I would still recommend that we have dedicated money to hire a facilitator. Perhaps not one of these big criminal justice agencies, but just a plain facilitator, I think that's been a good experience for us, so.
Yeah, agree. I mean, I'm not trying to make too much of this, especially because this was like the first conversation. I think the right way for it would be we figure out what we need here and how to pay for it, and then there's possibly the opportunity to get some funding, pilot it with one of the first work groups that stands up. Maybe they can help. It could also be as simple as This is, there's two big organizations that are sort of all the legislatures, all the legislators, and CSL is one, CSG is another. CSG specifically has their Justice Center based in New York, staff all over. They could augment the research function, depending on the subject matter, at least. Separately from or in addition to sort of facilitation help. And I agree, I think we've all had a pretty good experience with Barrick and Kerry here, and I think ongoing could benefit in the same way. So I probably said enough on it for now, but I wanted to, it's emergent in the last 48 hours, so I wanted to share it.
Yeah, I think it is important as to home a little bit, because the CSG just did a report that I read about prison population and studying other states that I sent, because I just saw it and what they were doing about short sentences. And short sentences in prison has been an issue that Travis raised with us years ago about, you know, people coming in and, you know, already past their PED and all that, and there's some research on that. If that's a study group, I think CSG has a lot of expertise in that area, and I think when you track what research projects they do, if they match up, it would be helpful.
Yeah, so just for further clarification, then I can be quiet. A lot of times when we bring in technical assistance, we have to plan quite a ways out, so it's something that we would need some good legs on to apply for the federal funding, wait for that to come through. Sometimes some of these organizations already have funding from the federal government to provide technical assistance in the space so that we could apply towards them and allowing them to assist us with various projects, but just to clarify that.
Okay.
A question for the chairs. When it comes to voting and what we're including in the report, do we want to take a formal vote on what's in front with the note that would be in the report that the fiscal note would be informed by CDPS?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with that understanding and the discussion we've just had, can we do a roll call vote that the key items on this slide and the notes that the director made and the reference that Representative Weissman has made to seeking grant funding where possible and appropriate?
Yeah, let me just talk about other resources.
Yeah.
We talked about, you know, we heard testimony about reimbursing people. So the recommendation here was, you know, for those of us who come during our regular work days, we're not going to get per diem, right? But for people who come outside that are non-governmental employees, they would match, but we didn't know the number, but whatever people get for jury service for a day. I don't know what that is, but at least they would get some per diem during that time period. And they would get mileage for non-government employees. Probably not much, it's probably like $50 or $100.
I think it's 50.
$50?
Yeah, I think that was.
It seems really steep.
Yeah, at least something, because we couldn't
Yeah, I mean,
pay, but there would be something, as well as mileage.
Because it's analogous, really. You're doing a kind of a civil service.
Yeah, and I think it's smart to tie it to that, not a hard number,
Yeah.
so that it changes as.
I agree.
Over time.
Yes,
Yeah, at least there would be something, right? Do you have a budget for like meals or anything?
No, we didn't, and
Well, that's why we always
I guess my
started-
recommendation, you know, might include, because this is not something CCJJ did before, we probably need a fractional person to do the work with reimbursement and all that kind of stuff as well. That doesn't, it's not included in what I recommended.
Veronica, I'm sorry, Victoria.
Or FTE, right?
Just for clarification, would the resources for meeting venues and technology include or the per diem possibly include reimbursement to community members who are attending listening sessions and things of that nature? I know we got a lot of testimony on that.
I think that's going to be a stretch to get that paid for.
No, I mean, it's not a source of income for people. If they're interested, they can come, but I think the point was to compensate people who are serving
Yeah.
on the task force.
Yeah, I think that's the best you're going to do realistically.
Is it possible that one of your task forces or subcommittees might seek philanthropic funding to support participation?
I don't know anybody who does that.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
So those online are seeing that, those in the room who have your backs to the screen, I've added that CDPS would inform the fiscal note and that there would be a note to pursue grant funding to supplement where possible and appropriate.
That seems innocuous.
With that, let's run through a roll call. Vincent?
Support.
Chair Kane?
Support.
Ubaldo?
Support.
Janet?
Support.
The sheriff has left. Senator has left. Tristan?
Support.
Director Hilke?
Support.
Debbie?
I support it.
Chair Raines?
Support.
Standing in for Director Stansel?
Support.
Thank you, Adrian. Victoria?
Support.
Emily?
Support.
Representative Weissman?
Support.
We have unanimous support from all members in attendance in person and online. We will now talk about meeting locations. And this was less controversial and more we wanted. We heard from so many stakeholders and from all the members. So your chairs wanted to make sure we included something in the report. You'll see the notes about meeting locations include that it's convenient to the public with preference for Capitol or judicial building for full commissions. Location convenient to the public is determined by task force members, may need to be more flexible depending on their subject matter. All should allow for remote participation. All meetings shall be subject to open meeting laws and live streamed. Meetings should provide multiple means for public input and comment as appropriate. Chairs, do you want to provide additional context before we open it up?
I mean, I just think we're trying to do the best we can here. And kind of the overarching one that I recall was, let's not do it out west, right? Let's try and bring it more to the people. And I think Rep. Weissman kept saying that, you know, the people's building and we're doing the people's work. So it made sense to me to try and center it around the Capitol. The judicial building is also a possibility when there's conflict. It may get even a little dicier when you start breaking out task forces, but I think we can find places within this radius.
My only other thought is we've had some discussion about, and this may be more at the task force level than the commission level, but virtual certainly helps. But in addition, and there'll be logistical issues to solve for here, actually doing an in-person meeting up there in the world, I don't know, Grand Junction, Alamosa, you know, not around here.
I think, yeah, I envision that with the task force work. And I don't know how you encourage that here in language.
As a lawyer, the amount of merely precatory language that I see here on a daily basis is crazy.
Yeah, you guys love those declarations.
Lots of, oh, no. I don't mean text. I mean precatory language in the CRM. So there's lots of models for that. And we could say, maybe there's more at the task force level, and we can, if there's sort of broad agreement here to do something aspirational at the drafting stage, I don't need to belabor it, but I think we heard enough of that. We should try to honor it, and without binding a task force that doesn't even exist yet, I think we can figure out some language to urge meetings to be out there in the world, you know.
I think the report is a great space for some language around the fact that this is supposed to be a statewide group or two bodies that, you know, meet the people where they are, and the task forces will work to accommodate location and having a statewide, you know, ability for input statewide.
So I've just made a note on the slide that we would include in the report encouragement for task forces to hold some meetings in the communities
throughout the state.
Right, and I think that's what we were trying to say by saying they may need to be more flexible depending upon the subject matter. If the juvenile group is talking about YOS, they may need to go to YOS and have their meeting down at YOS or whatever it is. The location, you know, the subject matter may drive location.
Yeah, or imagine, all right, the adult group does something on, you know, disparities in survivor resources in rural versus front range. Well, then you got to get out of the front range and go do the meetings.
Right, or whatever. So I think we can put all that in the narrative
Space in
too.
the fiscal note there for that.
Well, I was gonna say, we still get the opportunity to do the fiscal note, right? So,
Right,
because we're gonna have to take into account not just the staffing of the task forces and the commission itself, but this extra work, travel,
Yeah.
reimbursement, all of that.
Could be subject to available resources, as
Right.
standard language.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, downstream of here, so, at some point, we get late bill authority to write something up, and we'll figure out what the process is of mapping a report to that. And then, yeah, it goes out for fiscal like anything else, and you get it, and everybody else gets it.
I'm going to ask for a vote. I don't think it's a formal recommendation. It's asking for your support for us to include these items in the narrative of the report. Chairs, I don't believe these are formal recommendations. This is guidance
Aspirational objective.
guidance of the work group.
Will that include perhaps meetings outside the metro area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know you're including
Oh,
task force
yeah,
for whole
okay.
meetings, including throughout the state.
I have my back to this.
No, I understand.
I'm always looking out for the rural thing.
Yeah, it can't be aspirational if Stan has to fiscal note it. If we say we're going to go to different places, I don't think you can fiscal note
Fiscal notes can be very
aspiration.
aspirational.
Yeah. We would love to have.
It's the lottery.
So I think it is really a recommendation that a certain percentage of it meetings, and you'll have to make some costs related to that.
Okay.
Because if they're, if task forces are always going to be open meetings, we're going to need the ability to have computers, right?
Yeah, I mean, bare minimum, we need like Zoom and streaming and recording rig. I think no question about that. Exactly the cost driver of like remote meeting, getting around the state, it depends. I mean, we don't yet know what the first task forces are going to be. Maybe getting out there isn't as important. Maybe it is. At some point, a note will say something like, sort of indeterminate for now, and, costs will go through the annual budget process.
Yeah. Right.
Someone says you've read it.
I'm going to ask for a roll call on this, for us to include this as guidance from the working group, and aspirational intent. We'll get language to all of you on that. Vincent?
Support.
Chair Kane?
Support.
Ubaldo?
Support.
Janet?
Support.
Tristan?
Support.
Director Hilke?
Support.
Debbie?
Support.
Chair Raines?
Support.
Adrian?
Support.
Victoria?
Support.
Emily?
Support.
Representative Weissman?
Support.
On our last topic, and I'm going to leave it to the chairs whether we get through this entirety or if we need to revisit a conversation in person, hybrid, or some combination. But this involves the duties. And we had a very initial conversation back on January 29th. Since then, we haven't had the opportunity to dig into this. On your slide on the right is what were the duties listed for CCJJ. On the left are draft elements from your chairs for consideration based on stakeholder input and the input they received from all of you. I will just read quickly through the key elements identified in the draft side, which include evaluating policies that the group recommends.
And a lot of these that we put in here were from other states.
Yeah.
Just random thoughts and ideas, and really didn't get into them so deep,
Reducing prison population, crime prevention, violence interruption, sentencing guidelines and practices, disparities in sentences, clarity in sentences, enhanced decisions on resource allocation. I think this should have been split. Data-driven recommendations for sentencing and corrections, review of current crimes and sentences, review of programs and practices, support victims through increased resources, addressing reentry, community awareness and education, outreach to communities and community leaders. And I would suggest, unless the chairs differ, we're probably not ready to take a vote on these duties today, but want to have some brainstorming about what on the left is right, what is missing from the list on the left, what, if anything, from the right side list, the historic CCJJ, should be incorporated.
One obvious thing that's missing to me on the list of new duties is looking at recidivism.
I will ask, because I'm obligated to, any objection to the inclusion of looking at recidivism?
No,
That makes sense.
about, make sure, this might be the wrong way to say it, but alternatives to system involvement.
Are you meaning things like diversion programs?
I think it could be more than that. I mean, it could be
Broadly?
the mental health level,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So deflection before we even get to diversion.
yeah.
400 million.
Alternatives to criminal justice and juvenile justice system involvement, deflection / diversion.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we don't talk of whatever phraseology we use, upstream, deflection, diversion, alternatives, I mean, we sort of have to, given how we have framed the mission and the vision.
Avoidance.
Tom and Maureen, are you thinking that you guys huddle and we put together a formal list of duties and have a final conversation to vote on those?
Yeah, we can take the first whack at it and then let everybody else fix it.
Yeah.
Emily, you've got your hand up.
We haven't really worked on it that much yet.
Thanks. I think the one thing I see missing from the list, that's in green on the left is something that references evaluating or considering, victims' rights as we look at policy recommendation. And I'd like to see something called out specific to that, please.
Thank you, Emily. Others, and I would encourage you, don't try to get the wording perfect. Tom and Maureen will wordsmith and we'll bring it back to everybody, but topics or key duties that you would like to see named. And I'd also invite, I know we're getting away from CCJJ, but if you see anything on the old list that you say, that still should be. Adrienne.
If I could modify language, instead of saying reduce prison population, maybe reduce incarceration rate.
Yeah, and we say incarceration in our mission is to reduce reliance on incarceration. And I think that's a good way to say it, a better way.
You're making sort of an absolute number versus rate point as well.
Yeah.
Which in the face of growing population does mean something. I appreciate the point.
Do we want an annual report?
I think we do. Doesn't that help guide you all?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, the standard thing is that it gets reported to the relevant SMART Act hearing and goes in the statutory reports database. So it's a matter of public record outside of SMART as well. I think that makes sense.
Representative, are you proposing that annual report be listed as specifically for SMART Act hearings, or just that is one of the utilities of it?
It would be one, but not the only, and frankly, it probably should come to SMART Act. I mean, CCJJ always did.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, like, so Tom, we're gonna talk about Human Trafficking Council, sunset, but kind of lack of touch points to the legislative process there. So they've been emitting these policy ideas that are hanging out there for years and nothing's ever happened. We do not want that here.
But I would like, I do think we should evaluate what we recommend in the policies. There needs to be, but I think we should put in there that there is a collective research on, effective policies and practices in these spheres that's updated every 5 years or so. Because we did the one in the beginning of CCJJ and then we haven't done another. Where like a collection of the research on, what are best practices for recidivism? What are the sentencing policies? Does incarceration actually prevent crime? Which of course we know it doesn't unless you incarcerate only if you incarcerate certain people. So those kinds of studies, I think, are always valuable to have to fight against people's perception of what happens versus what the data and research says. So I would say, have it in there that they always update the research.
Do you mean an internal update every so many years within the entities, or like Rep. Weissman was saying, to actually put it into 27203?
No, I don't think at the SMART Act. No, just internal. But a report on it, like the study they did, like the research paper that Roger Probowski did.
Yeah. So we're talking two separate things. I'm hearing the research every 5 years and the annual report.
Ongoing research update to inform the work, and then 12 months at a time, what work have we been doing?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's
With the transparency.
Yeah.
And the fourth bullet down on the historic duty side is interesting. To study and evaluate outcomes of commission recommendations as implemented. So sort of an ongoing look at, okay, so in 25, work group X said do this, and in 26, the legislature did it. And then from the vantage point of 29, what's actually going on? Frankly, we don't do that enough around here. It potentially gets resource intensive, depending on how that is scoped, but I don't mind including that.
Well, it's almost like it becomes a driver or a bylaw of the commission to state that in legislation that is brought forth by the group, that each piece of legislation has a reporting component within each, subsequent bill, right? So overall, the commission is keeping track of what does it do, but then it becomes incumbent on those pieces of legislation that are born from the group to sort of carry out that reporting within itself going forward, so that it's not this behemoth for the commission to keep track of year over year over year.
Well, does that sit with, Stan, your Office of Research? They kind of set the parameters and be responsible for that?
It would be the way that I would be thinking of it would be if we set up bylaws for sort of how we propose legislation or present legislation to legislators from the commission. The idea would be that bill, let's say it's a bill for new pineapples every year, for all, right, just for clarity, then the Pineapple Committee runs a bill, but that bill says each year the Pineapple Commission will report out how well they did on pineapples to the committee. That way, this commission could just pull those reports in, so we don't have to do a new report every year. We could say we ran 10 bills. Each commission who has each of those bills did a report. Here's what we got.
If I could just add to that, a couple things. One is I hope that if we're putting out recommendations through these groups, that the literature review is going to be part of that recommendation, so you can see what evidence base is there that went into some of the decision making. That's number one. Number two, I think we have to be careful about too frequently reporting out on data or too soon. Oftentimes we have a situation where it's like, we asked you to do this in June, in January we'd like to know if it was a success or not, and it's like, we don't know if it's a success or not, we got to give it time, it's got to breathe a little bit.
Totally. I mean, I like the idea of take a look back. I agree that the law's been in effect for 6 or 12 months is not really a valid period in which you do that.
I've seen it both ways, to answer your question, Janet, where the commission has tried to talk about, the results of what has passed, but also we have other things we have to report in the SMART Act as a department that are specific in statute, specifically on identity theft, which is a group we have formed in the CBI. It says in the statute specifically we have to report out at the SMART Act hearing about that, so it can be both ways. The report that is done every year, if you've seen it, is a pretty weighty report. If you get into the research and study of every recommendation in the out years, it's going to become more weighty. For sure. So the longer this thing is in effect, the more goes on the books. That universe grows. Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, and some of it some of it gets reported out in other things, like right now, the prison population projection reports, I think it's on the governor's desk waiting for final approval or whatever. It'll come out. It sometimes informs, you know, it doesn't probably fully inform specific recommendations, but you get the opportunity to see the timeline of when a recommendation happened and what it did to the population. So it speaks to it as well. Other reports will speak to it as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And we just have to make sure that if there are other reports that are tangential, they were referred to or not within the report.
You know, on a different CCJJ historical bullet, work with other state-established boards, task forces, or commissions. We don't have to belabor this too much, but like there should be some awareness. I remember walking up maybe it was the East Steps in the summer, bumped into an LCS staffer, and we get to making small talk. Oh, what are you doing this summer? She's staffing the interim group on child welfare. By her count, there's 45 different state boards, commissions, entities, task forces, something. This is, you know, meant to be the hub for these discussions, but particularly given what task forces spring up, like there will be other things that might be worth learning from, syncing up with. It doesn't need to be more than a sentence or two, but there should be awareness. And that can come from, I'm not going to put it on a task force member who's serving in a volunteer capacity to know what the heck else is going on in state government, but this can be the role of particularly the legislative service agencies, because they're going to be covering and supporting a lot of that. So just to the charge about what do we want to carry over from the right half of this sheet, that's worth carrying over in some fashion.
Yeah, and I actually, as I envision this, that this coordinating council between the two commissions, the overlapping, as we've described their job as being the outreach and making sure they, you know, if we need a newsletters or whatever of what's going on or when meetings are, whatever, they would also be the group that would say, there's these other commissions working, like how does this overlap with OJDDP or what, you know, whatever, you know, your work, especially in the juvenile area, there's so many groups that you can't even think of all those letters. You know?
I'm looking at the clock and I want to make sure we respect folks' time. Are there other key concepts or duties that folks want to make sure Tom and Maureen include when they huddle and put together a list of duties? It seems pretty clear we're going to have to come back to everybody with a vote on duties.
And then if you think of something over the weekend, just shoot these guys an email.
I think that's probably going to be most productive. If I can ask everybody to set aside 15 minutes to give some real thought to this slide, we'll make sure it's in everybody's email. I think it is now. And shoot me any ideas you have between now and the weekend, if you could, and we'll get that cleared up. And we'll figure out if Tom and Maureen want to bring everybody back here to vote on this, or if we do just that one vote online, we're happy to do it however you'd like.
Yeah, that might be viable.
I have to say, I am in awe of what you all got through in 12 weeks and in 2 hours today.
I think it's pretty awesome. Can't build a unicorn, come on.
Fatigue is the friend of
Thank you. It feels like you're about to wrap us, and I just wanted to say that we've sort of, in my opinion, glossed over the name a bit, and it feels like maybe we're sitting with a decision, but we haven't really talked about it.
That's very fair.
I actually really like in the mission the way the language is about improving the system, as opposed to in the vision it talks about changing the system, but I'm not particular in the other details.
Yeah. I think improve is a more positive statement.
So would you suggest Colorado commissions to promote adult and juvenile justice system improvement?
That sounds delightful to me. Thank you.
Reaction?
Say that again, Bert.
The Colorado commissions to promote adult and juvenile justice system improvement. as opposed to promote system change.
Yeah, I like that.
I think I like change more, but obviously,
You
I
always
come from
do.
a different, yeah. I love change. My whole life I like
You're
change.
a change agent.
I like change.
Let me just do an informal, and members online, you can do physical hand or you can use the fancy
But
emoticon.
I have another
Adrian,
option, I
yeah.
gotta throw it
Oh,
out there, I'm sorry. What if you said Colorado commissions to improve adult and juvenile justice systems?
What I was gonna say, the same thing, except leave systems out and just
Colorado
say-
commissions to improve adult and juvenile justice systems.
Systems, is that what you're saying?
And I was
I would-
gonna suggest that, but just dropping systems, so that
Yeah.
it's Colorado
I like that.
commissions to improve adult and juvenile justice.
I like that.
I have a motion.
So the proposal, if I'm hearing, is the Colorado Commissions to improve adult and juvenile justice. Yes? Is that what I'm hearing?
That is what you're hearing.
Yeah, I like that one.
Okay, I'll go with you then.
That'll grow up.
Let's do this the formal way. The proposal is for the name to be Colorado Commissions to Improve Adult and Juvenile Justice. Vincent?
Support.
Maureen?
Support.
Uvalde?
Support.
I like to change myself, I'm not saying I'm gonna
Janet.
change myself.
Welcome to my world in health
Enthusiastically
judiciary.
supported.
Tristan?
Not support, I'm going with Maureen's idea of change.
Okay. Director Hilke?
Support.
Debbie?
I support.
Tom?
Support.
Adrian?
Support.
Victoria?
Support.
Emily?
Support.
Representative Weitzman?
Yeah, all right.
I have an I guess, a yeah, all right, and a no. The other members all support. Mr. Lesker, did you want to vote on this?
Yes, I like the system. I mean, I like the change at the end, so I'm gonna go with the change thing.
So if I can look, we ended with 11 to support Colorado Commissions to Improve Adult and Juvenile Justice. We have 3 preferring the word change. I believe we have a significant majority for the names being Colorado Commissions to Improve Adult and Juvenile Justice. I will figure out, I guess that acronym's gonna have to get CCIAJJ.
Oh, God.
Let's make sure we didn't spell something
Right,
naughty.
Or that it doesn't match another acronym somewhere else.
Right.
That seems, we're running out of acronyms.
Okay.
Run it through the acronym.
With that, I would suggest, if everybody can get your suggestions to duties to me by the end of this week, or over the weekend, I'll be working on this. We'll get with Tom and Maureen the first of the week, circulate to everybody a proposed draft set of duties, and we will convene on how best to take the vote on that.
Great.
Thanks, co-chairs, really a lot of hard work.
No, all of you.
Yeah.
No, this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
good
yeah.
collaboration. Nothing
Yeah.
easy, nothing easy in this.
Now we'll draft a bill.
I'm sorry, we do have one request for
And then
public comment.
Well, we do have to get the final report and everybody has to read it and
Oh, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
vote on
We've
it,
got
right?
public comment.
As well as the duties.
Kristen Hartman, I have 3 minutes for you if you'd like to address the working group. Kristen, are you with us?
Can you hear me now?
We can. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hopefully this is the last time you guys will hear from me. I know you're tired of it. My name is Kristen Hartman. I represent myself as an exhausted and defeated affected citizen of the criminal justice system with no viable pathway of engagement with my government. You all acknowledge that the word transforming in your title and mission should have a transformative infrastructure. And yet here we are after months having followed a traditional process with a traditional 3 minutes for affected citizen testimony, complete with a professional facilitator skilled at leading a traditional process, resulting in a model that is essentially the same as the old model and does not incorporate any identifiable affected citizen inputs beyond the one lived experience member of the committee, despite being told numerous times and by many affected citizens that people with lived experience are not a monolith. With due respect, Ubaldi does not represent me as a childhood domestic violence and sexual assault survivor, or my daughter's experiences as a service-related disabled veteran left homeless by a SWAT raid while on wait list for treatment and trying to outmaneuver her abuser. Nor did we elect him to represent us, we elected you. The need for affected citizen input dominated but 2 of your 4-hour meetings. You all acknowledged it. While it was all very efficient and keeping in with tradition, affected citizens are no closer to engaging with you now than we were before. Lack of affected citizen access to the public policy process is the overriding problem evidenced in all public testimony that needs solving. And this structure not only does not solve that overriding problem, but actually doubles down on it. None of you wanted your seat left out of the membership, yet the group by design leaves out the affected citizens you're creating policies for. Again, you're creating for us what you don't want for yourselves. The system devalues victims and affected citizens by design in that our abuse and survival is only worth 3 minutes of lawmakers' time. It is citizen apathy by design. What was the point of having all of those affected citizens relive their experiences in a public forum to you if you aren't considering their inputs in your decisions? What did they gain by standing before you with their stories, begging you for more access and inputs? And like with my own rep ignoring me about this commission after spending a semester working on it. What can I do about it? What can they do about it? Nothing. It is bad enough that we survivors are dismissed by our peers, our neighbors, our communities, but to be dismissed by you, our leaders, in positions of power so strong that we are literally at your mercy, put you on the same vertical plane as our abusers, dismissing our pain, our losses, our fears, as you make decisions that hurt us. And so we live in fear of you, your power over us, and the lack of recourse we have when impacted. Colorado is 7th in the nation for people killed by police, which I'm reminded of every time I replay the home security footage of the Denver SWAT raid on my daughter's house over and over, and overcome with fear and despair, not only from the guns and the battering ram bashing in the windows, but from the cold indifference with which my letters, my testimonies, my phone calls, my education have been received. Gun violence is gun violence.
I am going to need you to wrap up. I have one more member of the public. If you could wrap up in the next 30 to 60 seconds.
Gun violence is gun violence, no matter who has their finger on the trigger. The lack of recourse, the lack of a pathway for affected citizen voices and the policies that hurt us is the problem needed solving. Silenced and defeated is how I felt as a childhood domestic violence and sexual assault survivor. And it is how I felt in the 3 years since our government sanctioned SWAT raid on my daughter's house while she was on wait list for treatment. Her trauma and resulting homelessness, the constant harassment of her abuser, the time, the hope lost, the money spent, the predators, the silence of lawmakers and prosecutors has been too much, to the point I've withdrawn from school this semester because, like you, I didn't like having my work ignored, shelved, and thrown in the trash unread. But I do know that and I'm finishing, but I do know that the TCJJ, like the CCJJ, is a policy monopoly that makes it even more difficult and more painful for affected citizens to gain even a little bit of equity when it comes to policy decisions impacting us. I'm almost done. There must be a viable, not a token, path for affected citizens to participate in the public policies impacting us, and the structure you've created does not solve that problem. Instead of strengthening your policy monopoly, consider strengthening our democracy, which includes, not excludes, the people affected by the laws you create and pass. And I thank you so much for your time in all of this. You probably won't hear from me again. I'm just, after 50 years of this, I can't do it in 3 minutes. So thank you very much. I know you all mean well, but it's not funny to me that, anyway, thank you so much for your time. And I've enjoyed all of these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. We appreciate you following the work of this group. Brian, you wanted to address the group.
Yeah, I just very a minor suggestion in the list of members, and I don't know what among that language is going to make it into the actual legislative language, but in the researcher that's listed among the juvenile justice members, I would suggest omitting that parenthetical around brain development and child psychology, as it's unnecessarily limiting. and it doesn't reflect the academic research member in the adult group.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you joining us today. And for those who don't know Brian, he works in juvenile justice and diversion. He's a member of the state's JJJT Council. So I see no other members of the public. We are at 2 p.m. exactly. Again, if everybody could send me by the weekend your thoughts on duties, I'll get with your chairs. We'll get those cleaned up. As Maureen says, what we'll need to do is vote on the duties. We will also be moving quickly to draft the report, circulate that for everybody to review. Our goal and commitment is to have that to the governor's office by the 15th of March. Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, any final words?
No, so we had tentatively talked about another meeting, but we're not, are we going to have that or?
I will leave that.
Well, do we need that to vote on this final piece, or?
I think we'll need to have a format of meeting, whether it's, again, hybrid or just a shortened online only to go over duties. I'll defer to you.
And to do a final vote on the report, don't you, or do we think we need to vote on the report?
I think we need to vote on the recommendations and circulate the report, but
okay.
If anybody feels differently.
So our date that we saved was?
Next week, I think.
Next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have the 7th from noon to 2 blocked for our next meeting.
Yeah.
So if we can keep that hold on everybody's calendars, and the chairs will figure out format and actual length of that.
Let's do that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you all for joining online.
Thank you.